Hello, welcome back to Downbelow RPG. We are designing adventures for you. Last time we finished designing one adventure, and now we're going to design a follow-up adventure, which is also a standalone adventure. You can use it for either purpose. I am Ian Price, and I am the system's main designer.
And I'm Steve, and I am the guy who tells stories a lot.
Yep, so world and characters and the plots that they are formed of and formed by, whatever. So,
It's a blob.
it's a wibbly-wobbly ball of story, character, world stuff.
I guess. Might or might not include actual doctors.
Yes. So, today we have a new story on the docket, which is related to the old one, but not exactly the same. Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, we're going to go over a brief overview in this one before we launch into actual scenes. So, we came up with a really fun company to work with last time because it deals with all sorts of possible, biological, horror, conspiracy, bodily autonomies type of questions.
And this is a cyberpunk setting, so having big corporations and other monolithic entities as bad guys works pretty well.
And don't worry, we're going to use biodynamics in more ways than just the source for all of your unethical villain supply needs.
Oh yeah, they'll be good guys in other stories.
Because nobody is all one thing or all another thing. But we're just going to keep the biodynamics ball rolling in this case.
And in another adventure, I'm sure we'll use a government as a bad guy, or
a
gang,
good guy,
or whatever. But for now, we're sticking with the ones we've already introduced you to, because we want to make a natural seg.
So in this case, we're talking about a follow-up. It can be run as a direct sequel, literally directly following on from. It can be run as kind of a spiritual successor because it deals with similar themes, or it can actually be run as its own standalone thing if for whatever reason you would prefer not to run the first adventure, or perhaps you'd like to run the first adventure second. You can actually do this in that order because, after all, the characters had to have come to the attention of biodynamics somehow, and what better way to get rid of people who have snooped into your private files than dooming them to a life of medical and prosthetic research. Oh, I got ahead of myself. Yeah, this is going to be more of an investigation conspiracy story than a fugitive run for your life story. Although there will be some of that involved, I'm certain.
Especially if you get found out.
So, in this case, we're still working with biodynamics. We're still working with them perpetrating unethical acts on the people of Nuevo Paradiso, because let's face it, the entire island has fallen through the cracks, and if this works, it's not going to make a dent in the tourism industry. In fact, quite the opposite. Biodynamics has a burgeoning neurochemical research department. This particularly means that they're working with chemistry, neurochemistry in specific, that affects people's moods. The end goal is to have literal mood-altering beverages and other over-the-counter drugs available freely for purchase, so that if they say that Nuevo Paradiso is the happiest place on Earth, well, guess what? It's in the water.
Well, yeah, and one of the areas of, oh god, what have we done? One thing you may notice is that in cyberpunk, you get techno-horror, and this story is no exception. The techno-horror we're going into here is sense of self and control of your actions, because the player characters may end up in situations where if they fail actions, they choose not to use their successes to find out what's going on, the consequences will be that they come out of a fugue state, essentially, and then remember that they've just done something that they didn't want to do, but their mood or possibly even their decisions were altered. It may be that one of the things we may introduce here is research in their neurochemical stew that is based on some of those fungi that actually get into people's nervous systems and make them do specific actions.
So we're going to do something a bit differently for this one than for the last one. Because it's an investigative scenario instead of a straight-up story scenario, there's going to be a lot more connective tissue and a lot fewer do these scenes in order. So we'll be talking about the major scenes, but they're not going to be in any specific order. It's going to start off in one direction, and it's going to keep going, but there's going to be any number of places it can go. And we'll start off next time with the hook and the introduction that gets people into this seething, unholy neurochemical mess.
Essentially, there's going to be two major scenes that you can't do without. There's going to be the introduction hook, which is what we're talking about next time.
Yep.
And there's also going to be the big secret that you find out. You can't do without that. It's the object of the investigation. After we talk about the first big scene, we're going to talk about all of the different ways that you might go from the first big scene and how they might lead into the next one.
And how they might lead into each other.
Exactly. And then after we talk about the big reveal, we are going to have another segment where we talk to you about where do you go from the big reveal, because the way that the players react to it and what they choose to do about it and what gets done to them after it may go in lots of different directions depending on how it was led into and how you choose to do it.
So that's what we got for you today. Again, this is more of a teaser. Stay tuned tomorrow for more about the introduction to this particular adventure.
Thanks for falling through the cracks with us.